All righty. So, Ken, welcome from Luxxfolio, founder, president, man of the hour. My name is Ilan. Usually we do this with a gentleman named Divish. Unfortunately, he's just busy today, but it's okay. You got me, and it's more than enough. So thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your $2 million investment from Bigg Digital Assets. Just a little bit about us. If you've watched our other videos or not, I myself am an entrepreneur. I run a couple of businesses. I was always looking for a way to get into the crypto space, but I was very hesitant on buying BTC. It was a little out of my budget. So I started, I was provided some information regarding Bigg, and through my due diligence, I learned a lot about, first of all, the leadership of the company, what their mission statement was, how they're going about it, regulation first, and all these things. Because I was watching a video about with you recently. I think it was in May. You were mentioning that nobody really know, like, this is not regulation right now, right? Like, nobody really knows when it's coming, but it is supposedly coming, and what kinds of things will change from that perspective. But anyways, through my due diligence of Bigg Digital Assets, I wasn't able to really online find any credible sources other than straight from Mark, the CEO's mouth. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to all these different avenues online to try and find information. I actually want to invest in this company. You know what I mean? I'm reading good things, but how do I get more information? How do I validate some of these things? And so I met a couple of people online. I started this Discord group with 3 people. It's running over a year now. We're at 270 members. We hold a substantial amount of shares in Bigg Digital Assets, as well as all the subsidies. Because honestly, we believe that Mark and his crew are doing it the right way. They're doing it with in their timeline, following the rules. We'll get to this, but you've seen what's happened, I'm sure, with Voyager and some of the information that's come out with some of these other exchanges. But Luxxfolio was very interesting to me because I technically, like me myself, I'm very noobish, I would say, in the mining side of crypto, and that's why you're here. A lot of our members want to learn a lot about yourself, the man in the driving position, so to speak, and go for there. So thank you very much, Ken, for joining us. It's much appreciated. We know how busy you are trying to build this monster up yourself as well, and so yeah, we thank you for that.
Excellent. Yeah, great background. Thank you.
Good. So tell me a bit about you, Ken. We were talking a bit off the record of your earlier athletic days when you were living out east here. So yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. Some, if any education, if there is any exits from prior businesses, just to kind of figure out and find out a little bit about you.
Yeah, and great question to kind of start it off. And in terms of education, I'll just kind of start there to give a quick primer. And then I really, thinking about this question, wanted to give some context. I've been an entrepreneur for quite a while, and some positive and some not so positive, the failures of being an entrepreneur. So that scar tissue, I want to share some of the stories and really in context of crypto. And crypto it's just an amazing industry. I think of the long-term tenure of life. I worked in construction for a while, and I was a 10-year veteran, but you're not seen as part of the industry unless you've been there for 50 years from the day you kind of come out of university. And crypto, been in it for 5-6 years, and you're a veteran. We have experience, we have the ups and downs, we have the connections of a really interesting infrastructure where people share, and that still is kind of part of it. I went to we talked, just for the background of everyone, Lan and I share goaltending fraternity. So that always is a great common bond to start off with. So we'll be super relaxed.
Yeah.
I graduated from the University of Calgary in management information systems, and went into school, came out of school and traveled for 6-7 months to Europe, and then came back, didn't quite know what to do. And I was on the business team during school, which was probably the best experience of that. And a mentor from there had called me up and said, "Hey, you looking for a job?" And I said, "Yeah." And he got me into a company called Digital Equipment. And Digital Equipment, which is no longer around, it got bought by pure hardware company, because my experience was Digital Equipment, Sun Microsystems, and IBM. Two of those companies are no longer around, which sold hardware. But Digital Equipment was fascinating. They gave you 9 months training before you were allowed to talk to a customer. And I sometimes think, where is that experience replicated now? How do you get your experience? So much of it's online. So much of it's just learning by doing. And so getting training plus learning by doing is just an incredible experience for me and set me up for future success. When I was 27, 28, and I had my first child, and I also went back to school to do my MBA. And part of that was maybe the insecurity of just being a salesperson. I recognize that that's the greatest skill set now in business, or one of the great skill sets. Maybe accounting's the other one, know your numbers. But that experience of the MBA and having the child just really transforming in terms of how you can look at things. I took new venture financing and just got exposed to some of the great entrepreneurs in Calgary. I live in Calgary, Alberta now, and it's just in terms of oil and gas and junior oil and gas, and I'll get to a little bit of the symmetry with, or the correlation with crypto mining and that, because it's very similar in some regards. But, I listened to kind of a couple of stories I want to share. The first was listening to a couple of the interviews, the Terra Zero boys, all very interesting, all very passionate about it. The metaverse absolutely captures my interest, because that is the early internet days. And I think back about that, and there's two things that reminded me. I talk about digital, Sun, and IBM. I sold storage products. So this is 25, 28 years ago. And this is how I think about the word exponential. So my budget was $20 million at Sun. I had Western Canada. So I had a big territory selling storage. 3-4 terabytes was kind of what I had to sell to get $20 million.
Right.
So you think, and the storage bricks were the size of a gold brick. Think about that exponentially now. Now we have Filecoin, where it's free through tokenomics. We don't have to get into that. But the exponential nature of technology, and you see some of the great speakers, Jeff Booth, talking about inflationary. That is just what we exist in. But you also have the upward pressure of all the amounts of storage pushing against that. So being in technology and starting in technology, you look within our industries and you think about adoption curves, you think about growth, and you think about where Bitcoin is on that S curve of adoption. We're at the bottom. Crypto is at the bottom.
We're just as Sean Ansey from Liquid Lightning, he said that this reminds him of like Internet 3.0, just the beginning of it.
100%, and that's exactly how I feel, having lived through that. And so on that, I guess the first company I started was when I did my MBA. I did a thesis on telework, working from home, and I did that because at IBM I was sent home to work, and I was a young man then, and everyone would make fun of me as the young man, saying, as if you're working, you're in your pajamas.
Right.
I'm a sales guy. You can measure me by what I'm selling. But I jump ahead now and think about that telework. But we created a telework company back then, and it ended up morphing into what was called an application service provider, which is early cloud company. And so the technology promise just was not there. The cost of doing that was, millions of dollars, versus now you have all of that network, databases, etc. That's why entrepreneurship has taken off, is all those hardware costs. You used to have to get a network guy, a storage guy, a server guy. You had to get all that. Then you had to get your own data space. So you're spending millions of dollars just to start up your .com company.
Yeah.
So we ended up selling that business to a company called Infocast, which is a Toronto-based company. And the CEO of that time was a gentleman named Jim Leach. And Jim Leach ended up subsequently running Ontario teachers' pensions for a long time. He was a financial genius, just brilliant. And he had found himself in this public company raising tens of millions of dollars. But he was a very introverted, thoughtful financial guy. I had sales training, and
you were the extrovert.
I was the extrovert.
The yin to the yang.
And I somehow ended up being kind of his salesperson to help raise the money. Like, he had a whole choice of people, but energetic, got technology. So I got to see inside a process of New York and at that time, California. Scott McNeely from Sun was an investor in that business. And, it went on this big rush. Ultimately, it ended up failing, but it raised tens of millions of dollars trying not to. It had the right people, the right team. And I guess my lesson there was the guts of building a company. You still have to build an extraordinary company that adds value. Getting money is one thing. It's how to execute and use that money and judiciously. But being able at that young age, getting that kind of rich experience of inside financing and banking, especially with a steward like Jim, and the rote, Elan, you do the same presentation 30 times a day, and you try to give it personality. You try to give it a little jive. But that was because I remember during those times too, there was a book, Business 2.0, I think was the book, and it was a magazine. And every page you turn, I remember flying and you turn a page and there was a $100,000 ad with the great idea that had raised 50 million. And I remember just thinking you could do anything.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the NFTs. It reminds me of the metaverse. You can do anything. So what are you going to do? That's almost the harder question, right? What problem are you going to solve?
Yeah.
Is it worth solving?
Well, and you said it before. What value are you going to bring that people, attached to, so to speak?
And I think that's parallel number one, right? The NFTs, DeFi kingdoms, the play to earn, all that is so exciting, but it's all washing out now.
Yeah.
And that's almost the grounded or the tilled ground for this next generation of thoughtfulness that's going to happen.
Innovation, yeah.
Innovation that's going to happen. So that money is meant to kind of push the industry forward because we're still all imagining what can be. So that's one kind of instance I want to share that was just a rich experience. After that, I did some of the investors in that I got to know, and they're kind of successful investors in Canada. And I ended up doing some of their turnaround work. They're, managing through adversity, which again is a skill set that served me well with what we're doing. But within that, there's another company that I was a founder of called M Private Residences. It's been rebranded as M Destinations. And I want to share that one because it reminds me viscerally of what we're going through right now as well. So that was 2003, 2004. And it was a luxury travel fractional. So it was innovation on real estate. Mm-hmm. And within that innovation, real estate's ultimately about using it and enjoying it. So it was built around creating community, family values, and kind of sharing your success. And we had, at that time, there was two things. One, we had an incredible customer base, just really good people that believed in the company. So referrals were coming in. Those were rich, frothy times. Go back 18 months, rich, frothy times. And we also had an amazing team. We hired a number of people from Fairmont, which, as we know, is a great Canadian institution. So we understood forward-facing, we understood housekeeping, all the mechanics of running a real estate that's being used, a portfolio of real estate. So the idea was simply use the place, but also participate in the underlying value of the real estate. We were early users of Salesforce at that time, which was, even back then, was wicked expensive. But what an amazing, useful tool. The sales team we had is still one of the best teams I've ever worked for, and the team we have now, mirrors that. At that group, we just had such an amazing team that was also part of the beliefs and the values of the company. And the system, we would send out some literature. We'd get a bunch of phone calls. We would have one meeting, two meetings. This was a husband-wife decision ultimately. So they would come in. So it was 3 or 4 meetings and we would close, and we'd track all this. If we spent this much on marketing, we would get, $4 or $5 million of sales a month. And that was rote. 2007 came along and everything was happening and meetings were happening. The third meetings, no checks were getting written. Like it went from 5 million to 4 to 3 to 0, literally went to 0. Mm-hmm. And those indicators are always there. So having data and opinions, I look at all the information that we're awash in crypto, and the charts and the data and the Twitter. trying to sort through that. What are your key facts? What are you using to make decisions? So we use an economic model, and mining, I'll get into this later, some of the basic economics 101. But if we understand what you are, you can make good decisions. And our inputs of Bitcoin price, difficulty rate, and hash rate being, you better have opinions of that. And you better be able to work to, in the analogy in Calgary, $12 oil. So kind of having those bases and principles. But I think back to M and that 2007, The Big Short, the Michael Lewis book, and the movie, subsequent movie. It's exactly the contagion that's happening now. When we were offline talking about Voyager, that's another, and there's more coming.
Oh, so, yeah. Mark was saying, I don't even remember. I think we had our interview with Mark maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And in the middle of that interview, he mentioned that there will come a time of heavy consolidation, heavy companies that are not regulated, like deregulated themselves. You're going to see a lot of consolidation of companies. And he said that 6 months ago, he was foreseeing that happening. And he said that Bigg Digital is lined up properly to sustain that time.
Yes, I admire about him. He's super thoughtful in that regards.
Yeah.
And again, if you have that opinion and you actually act on that opinion, and mine echoes his, because we're gripped by fear and uncertainty right now, right? Bad news. And go back to that M story. Why I share that, it's exact contest, and that was real estate, which is physical. Like you have an underlying asset, and those assets were trying to drive to zero because people thought people would never use places again.
Yeah.
And you jump ahead now, and 12 years later, that business is thriving and surviving, and even through COVID. Yeah. So, I think the bear markets and crypto, it brought back those memories. It brought back those kind of specific instances that equipped me to deal with the difficulties of now. Because when things are great, it's easy, you get up well. So how do you create a company that you can sleep at night is ultimately the kind of the measure and test. And when I talk to my board about this, it's about, and our new investor, Mark, it's just about how do we stay below the radar, because this is a great time for opportunity innovation if we lay low. And then we'll pop up in however long this is going to take. And it's going to be a bit of a down push for arguably 3-4 months. And Voyager is going to lead to a few more.
Well, Coinbase is having issues now as well.
I don't know much. I can't believe Coinbase, like that. Binance trapped them.
Over leverage. I think a lot of these companies are just over leveraging. And they're heavy in debt, and all these loans need to be paid back. A lot of these exchanges, so to speak, the larger ones, most of their liquidity pool is through BTC, right? So as the value of BTC hedges up and down, the value of their company and the amount of money that they have in liquid hedges up and down. And right now it's going down. So but I do agree with you that this is going to be a 3-4, if not a bit longer cycle. But I think it's fairly normal. People take their money in, put it out. We just went through, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of companies are doing corporate filings right now, right? So it's year end. A lot of people are trying to come up with money or show less money, or, all the creative things that could happen. So I think it's just very normal, but the volatility is insane. It's like stocks on steroids.
It's kind of exactly the comment, right? Bad news looks for bad news. You still need to solve a problem we're solving. You need to build a business that can make sure you can get you from here to there. So yeah, agreed on all that.
Yeah. So
those are kind of the primary backgrounds I wanted to share. There's obviously other stories in there, but those are the ones that I think just really fit this context and have equipped me for the future.
Yeah, listen, it sounds like you've learned on the job, right? Like you've learned how to deal with things and experiences that you've had to go through, and you're seeing a lot of comparisons and correlations repeat themselves as your experience has moved on through. And hearing you say that this reminds you of something prior, and you got through that and you thrived ahead, should give everybody a really good feeling about it too.
Look to the history to understand.
Always up.
You only recognize that when you have history.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, how did you, from those experiences, get into the position of founding Luxxfolio?
Yeah, and tangentially, we didn't found Luxxfolio,
Oh, you bought it.
but we probably did, and all that can be the punchline to this. So we'll set up the beginning of the story.
Sure.
So 2017, 2018, I was approached by a couple of individuals that I know in Calgary who were just very interested in blockchain and crypto. And within that, I've been reading about it, just skimming. You're starting to see the news on that. And it was fascinating because that whole idea of innovation and this banking hadn't ever really been touched, and this idea of blockchain and trying to understand it. And at that time, it was very difficult to get exposure to any crypto in your portfolio. And you're starting to go, this isn't, whatever it is, digital gold, digital inflation, whatever asset class you imagine it was, and it's gone through a variety of those now, it seemed interesting. And so I actually just invested some money and was going to leave it alone. They said, why don't you come help us raise the money? And I had a kind of a gap in a moment in time. Then I said, okay, this might lead down some interesting paths. And the rabbit hole, proverbial rabbit hole that everyone talks about, it was a rabbit hole. I'm still digesting and learning and going down that rabbit hole.
I don't think you ever stop.
I don't think I sometimes think about a management principle of life is how do you stay relevant, creative, motivated, and learning better beyond that agenda and self-learning. There's so much good information now. There's no reason not to always just go deep on something, whatever it might be. I spent Christmas reading about the metaverse because it's just, I don't want to get in it, but I want to understand it because I think it's related to what we do, and there's going to be some ideas around that.
Yeah.
That's why I want to get to know the Terra Zero guys at some point.
Yeah, you should. There's
so much in there.
Amazing guys.
Yeah, I said like that was one interview I really enjoyed in terms of I love what they're building. So
yeah,
so we raised the money, and it was okay. We got money, and it was pretty vague. And so Calgary has a lot of oil and gas, and within that oil and gas, it was people were going. It has some similarity to the commodity of oil and gas. And the use case that everyone's always looking for in Bitcoin. Ultimately, I just think it's the most pristine use of blockchain. It's the original use case, and it's ultimately that's going to be its success. It's scarcity. All the other things that people try to build it into, as I talked about the inflation against, or the hedge against inflation, the digital gold. Those are people trying to box it. Just let it be what it wants to be, which is ultimately scarcity and a monetary system that fights deflationary and inflationary and is scarce. And it's a resource that you can build on top of that. Talk about Litecoin and some of these other aspects that have come along now, which are other use cases because it was going to be a payment system or a clearing system. That one still makes some sense. So at this point, it was, okay, we have Bitcoin, and that was right at the beginning of crypto winter number one. And it's where should we participate in this? Initially, it was just simply going to be a trading portfolio, but all those coins at that time were being hit, and it wasn't clear which were going to be the winners and losers. But Bitcoin and Ethereum kept rising up. So our idea was we should get into the base infrastructure. And you go back to some of my experiences of data center and hosting. This is a data center business. Yeah. It is an infrastructure business with the complexities of electricity and cooling and understanding all that. And when you're early in an industry, you have all these learnings to do. But if you're a laggard, then you're always chasing the market. So timing in business is so important. Our timing was reasonable in terms of getting in. As I talked at the beginning, it's a community that shares, and we're part of that now. We're always willing to share kind of what we know, what we don't know. But we wanted to get into the mining infrastructure. And being in Alberta, we thought oil and gas was the way to go, natural gas, burning using gensets.
Yeah.
Crusoe just raised all that money. A number of groups do it. It is brutally hard on those gensets. The maintenance, tracking, like who saw gas happening so quickly? Gas has been down in Alberta for 7 years.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's
which is weird. Why is that? You guys manufacture so much oil and gas there, and you guys send it to the States to refine it and buy it back.
This is a Canadian problem, not an Alberta problem. Right?
Yeah.
This is a Biden Trudeau political problem in terms of we don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely, we're losing our value as Canadians in that. We are a resource country and we're losing our value
We're
around
a
the
high
gap.
commodity country.
Like
Lumber,
Medicine Hat,
oil.
we're always going to succeed as a resource-based country. Full stop. So why pretend otherwise? But natural gas being one of our great resources, the Medicine Hat, where Hut 8 is now, that was initially Bit Fury. We actually tried to get in there and we had 15 megawatts from them. And then this Russian company comes in. We got kind of a letter from Medicine Hat saying, yeah, we're going with this group. And there's Medicine Hat sits on like 100 years of gas.
Yeah.
Hut 8 is struggling a little bit now because that demand charge, there's a better use for that gas. And that's why their prices are going up. Mm-hmm. But again, at that time, you certainly didn't see that happening. You just saw 100 years of gas and we're going to be good. So we needed power. If this is an industry of constraints, you always need access to power. You want arguably green power now. That wasn't the case back then. And you want power that is inexpensive. And then you need all the other components of the supply chain working for you. And you need ASICs miners. So we started looking, and if hustle is a strategy in business, it was just picking up the phone and trying to find power. And we ended up getting an introduction to the Navajo Nation. And the Navajo Nation is a indigenous group, and it's the largest contiguous landmass in the U.S. So it's a sovereign nation inside the U.S. And it's probably about a $12 billion economy, and they run it very similarly to the U.S.
Wow.
They have a monopoly called the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, which is their wholly owned utility.
Their own power.
Yeah, their own power. And the Navajo suffer some of the same difficulties we do, unemployment, and because it's such a large landmass, there's a house here and then the house 3-4 kilometers away. So the utilities job is to make sure they all have power, electricity, water, etc. Mm-hmm. At that same time, there was a 2.5 gigawatt plant, a coal plant, that the Navajo and the US government was trying to keep up, but the pressure against coal was enormous and they ended up shutting it down. The power to that plant was 15 megawatts and it was stranded. And so we negotiated to get that power. And the working with the Navajo Nation, the president and the vice president and the political structure, and also working with the tribal utility is run by a gentleman named Mr. Walter Haas, and he's a German and long in utility, and interesting how he ended up there. It's a very interesting story too, but he just really cares about kind of moving and helping that group. So educating them on Bitcoin, crypto mining was interesting. And the most vivid moment of that was we had to get unanimous approval from the board of both the nation and this utility. And we're in this giant boardroom. They had just built a new head office, and they're very prideful. We went to the groundbreaking and the opening of that. And then we had to present on why they should let us use that stranded power. And we were in this big boardroom, and they had, this date me, but the Maxwell Smart Cone of Silence. They had a giant kind of round container that was supposed to reverberate your voice across. And my partner at T and Tram, he was next to me, and he was too small, so we're kind of next to each other, almost touching hands and trying to explain, which I probably was only 3 pages ahead of anyone at that time, Bitcoin and why we needed the power and what do you do with this and what does this mean? What's our risks? And at that time, they were coming as a joint venture partner. We were doing this together. And anyways, we've got unanimous support, and we proceeded with them to create the mine, to begin that infrastructure, and had the utility as a partner. Walter's become a very good friend and confident, and really has become savvy in the marketplace. The navigation of the politics and really knowing the nation, we've ended up being a great partner with them. So kind of jumping ahead, actually, just for the listeners, William Foxley at Compass, who are also in the news these days. Yeah. But William Foxley is in charge of the content side, just a great young man. They did an excellent documentary on this story on the Navajo Nation generally, where they fit, why they got involved with Bitcoin mining, and it has all of the players that we helped.
Yeah,
arrange.
if you can find a link to that, we'll add it to the video.
Of course, I can find it. Yeah.
We'll add it to the video in the details on YouTube, and we'll make sure people check it out because it's very interesting, and it's good to bring light to these types of communities, right?
It's a great origin story, and they're very much a part of it. So, okay, yeah, absolutely get that to you.
Yeah, perfect.
So the backdrop to that story, we had 15 megawatts going back into the time where we did the deal with Lux. We had capacity. Miners were $10,000 a miner.
Yeah.
What they are now. We didn't have enough capital to build that out. A company called Luxxfolio, which was basically a shell, and they had initially tried to 3 years ago, 2019, so 3 years ago, tried to do NFTs, early stage NFTs at that time. And they had an interesting idea where they were trying to work with, playing cards, NHL playing cards.
Yeah, sports cards.
Sports cards. Before the NFTs were really vogue, it ended up not making it. So they used the remaining of their cash to buy miners. And they didn't have any capacity to put that. So match made in heaven. So we were Westblock. We merged in as Luxxfolio, became public. And that's the founding of Luxxfolio. And then Keen and I have taken over the management and just naturally superseded.
Very, very interesting how your experiences have led you to people, and those people have led you to other people, and and into this partnership. At the end of the day, it's a lot of education is like what you know, but as you can see, it's all about who you know and who you network with. And I feel like if you didn't have that sales background and that outgoingness, extrovertish, to just networking people, you might not have gone as far as you have thus far. But using, you mentioned a couple of people from the other companies, using these people to work with, partner with, and move along with is how most businesses thrive, right?
And in this one, the conferences. Going to the conferences and making sure you participate has been so successful. The partner I talk about, Keen Tran, who founded this alongside me.
He's your chief operating officer?
He's our chief operating officer, yeah. He's king of the deal makers. And so when we go to ththese conferences, a competition, right? Who can meet, we go our separate ways, who can meet the most interesting
Shake as many hands as you can.
Yeah. And, the mining Discord one's coming up here in Miami in July. So I can't wait for that one because the mood's going to be interesting, what's going on. And we keep in touch. I try to talk to a number of the different CEOs of the other organization and share information, share intel, because, we're not necessarily competitive in terms of some of the things we're doing. So you can be open and just, what are you doing around this problem? What do you know about these guys? And you can get background checks.
Of course. So moving on, so we've learned about your background. We've learned about how you got into actually Luxxfolio through a partnership. So can you go into exactly what Luxxfolio does? What is the primary, target of the business? And
So simply, we're a Bitcoin miner. And really what that means is, the Bitcoin network is secured by mining. It's a process that validates transaction on the network. We secure the network. And I think that if you look at mining, it's really that no one entity is control. And so we're just part of this giant network of miners. What's happened in the mining space is it's a very capital intensive business.
Yes.
And I think I talked about the three things you need to succeed as a miner. It's really access to green, scalable energy now, megawatts. Renewable. And we have an abundance of that, an abundance to grow into. We never imagined being hundreds of megawatts big. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our pivots, particularly as we go through the crypto winter, but because it's a nice little business just to be part of that at the right size. And then we're looking for diversification efforts along the way. If you're in the industry, there's going to be lots for the next decade.
Yeah.
You need access to ASICs miners. And this is a very efficient market. When Bitcoin price ranges or network hash rate changes, different things go in flux. And this is the problem in the industry right now, is the abundance of ASICs miners. people have paid for that and they've been heavily levered. And so access to A6 miner was very, very difficult, and you had to pre-sell. There's primarily two groups, West Miner and Bitmain, that supply this. Other ones are starting to come in. Other ones have tried to get in. Apparently Intel, that's been news, but everyone has yet to see something. But some of these new North American providers are still trying to get into the market. And then you need capital. Canada has always been good about alternative capital. The junior capital markets that all started with oil and gas, but Vancouver is great for helping raise money for alternative capital ideas. So we've been able to leverage that as a public company. You actually hit something that I didn't have in it, but it's trusted relationship. That's a fourth element that you absolutely need, probably more so than anything in this.
Especially in a brand new industry, I think everybody tries to work together, because the more you guys work together, the more you guys innovate, the further it'll go, right? Yep. And that's how it goes.
So there's two ways we make money, and just keeping our narrow focus around the Bitcoin mining, we host and do it on behalf of other people. And that is very much a data center model where we take a spread in terms of our cost, we pass it on. And we've built up a very quality software architecture and support system, so we can actually host other people. And so for us, it's always, and the other one is self-mining, mining on your own behalf, on your own account. And the inputs in self-mining are difficulty of the hash rate, and hash rate is measured by how many computers are on the network fighting to earn the Bitcoin. And that hash rate creates a difficulty rate, and then you have the Bitcoin price, and then you have your cost of goods sold, operations, electricity being the primary one, and that creates your margin. So the business, it's not difficult to model. You have to guess at what the difficulty rate is, what the hash rate is, and what the price is. And then if everyone was modeling at 30,000, we're all modeling at 15,000, 18,000. It's just really looking ahead to how much hurt there's going to be for the next while. If you have the ability to operate above $10,000, you're going to be fine. And a lot of miners have that ability with the cost of electricity. We do.
What do you mean by $10,000? In what respect?
So your cost, the $10,000 in terms of cost of operations, electricity plus your staff and management.
Is that per machine? Like what is that?
Per Bitcoin. Per Bitcoin. Okay. So every Bitcoin mined, what's your cost to mine that Bitcoin?
Understood. Sorry.
No, that's me. That's something I wanted to mention pure tangentially back, but with the Navajo Nation, we have the exact same workers that we started with.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so I look at some of their knowledge and our ability to kind of keep our operation lean and knowledgeable. And we run a 7-day shift, 24-hour. And so we've brought some jobs and some taxes and some of that benefit, but that allows you to be a lean operator because we have a team that's loyal and that we can kind of be very, very efficient in terms of running an operation. This is the worst month for us. July is super hot where we are in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And so it's just
going to cost you more in energy.
It's our energy costs go up just because our energy costs go up actually because of the difficulty rate. It costs us more energy to earn a coin.
Right.
And then, but we have to run some more fans. We just have to be very careful about shifting the heat around. And so I think we're not a complicated in terms of what we do as a company, but the inputs and the management and the whole industry is complicated right now.
Yeah, because it's new.
Yeah. And because of all the influences going on. And then there's the competition from the larger ones that are just trying to do it at such scale. But the business scales at nice different steps. We like to kind of consider ourselves, again, using the analogy of oil and gas. We're a junior oil and gas company. And we fit nicely in that niche. And we're 1,000 barrel a day type oil and gas company. And that means we can just run lean. We also want to be very, very careful as we come into the halving, which is going to be March of 2023. You want to be careful of your capital infrastructure because we always look at our payout return of capital, whether it's on the miners or the infrastructure, because the infrastructure we're building is 10-year, 20-year assets. The miners are maybe 5 to 7-year assets. And so you always got to think about capital infrastructure. And there's two ways you should look at a Bitcoin miner. One is your cost of operation. So all your costs, electricity to produce one coin. And we talked about that $10,000 number. If all your costs are around that, but you'll also have to look at your capital cost, because in 5-7 years, when we have to replace those machines.
I mean, yeah, depreciation, right?
Yep. What is that actual physical cost? Is it another $10,000? So is it a $20,000 that we need as Bitcoin to make sure that, as we're accumulating money or coins in 5-7 years, we have the ability to put out $2-3 more million to keep that cash flow going. So
yeah,
that's
very important.
That's our decision-making framework.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So speaking of, we were saying, I think people are calling it now summer crypto, going through this little phase of in the patchness. So what are some of the catalysts that, Luxxfolio has coming up that, you mentioned earlier that, this is kind of a good time frame for companies to establish themselves, to lean out, you know what I mean? It's a little slower pace, less money in the market, like in terms of Bitcoin, essentially, trillions of dollars from this time last year have been pulled out. It's not a secret. But because of that, you mentioned that it's a good time right now, to set yourself up to change things, merger acquisitions, partnerships, whatever it may be. So what does Luxxfolio have in terms of upcoming catalysts that you'd like to see or you expect within the next year?
So first, it's zoom out. And, if we get caught up in all the terrible things happening, what I've been trying to tell myself and the team is, let's zoom out. Because one of the primary questions you have to ask yourself, is it existential? Like, is this, especially, we talked about the bad news wants bad news. The Chinese, of course, come out, we're going to zero.
Yeah, it's fear mongering, right? That's what they do to
fear mongering. And
yeah, that's
zoom out and go back to, like I said, this is the pristine use case. Bitcoin is going to be fine. It's another asset class, however you want to look about it. Let the pundits and the Bill Gates and all those poke at it. We believe in it. And if you believe in it and hold that value, okay, don't listen to the noise and just have your own belief system. So that zoom out, zoom in is kind of one of the themes I'm trying to get with our team. And we've certainly bet on Bitcoin as the winner in crypto. And if I look at, we talk about the bear market, it's an excellent time to innovate. If you look at the basis of our inputs for revenue, hosting, and mining, one of the things that we've been investigating for the last year is immersion. And immersion also comes from oil and gas, and it's basically using a dielectric fluid where you immerse the miners in that fluid, and it can run at a very equal temperature. So you're actually putting them into a fluid. You're taking off the fan, which is a use of power, and you can overclock because the temperature can be maintained. And it uses a dry coolant in this case. It takes the fluid, cools it off, and recycles it in.
Cool.
And that ability to overclock leads us to kind of what we think is an innovation in the model. And for us, if this is a bear market and we believe that crypto is going to be the winner, Bitcoin crypto is going to be the winner, our plan with immersion, it also allows you to go to other climates that you otherwise couldn't mine in. So some of the Southwest where we are, New Mexico is awesome because it's high altitude. You get very cold temperatures. It cools at night regardless. And it's just hot during the day, July, maybe part of August. But we can go to some other warmer climates that are really trying to get load. So
Arizona, places like that.
I don't want to say where because it's competitive for us right now, but it's the Southwest, and we're leveraging a Navajo relationship.
Okay.
And so with that, to this warmer climate, they want load, and we're working with a solar company, very large solar company that's going to bring us build load. So we'll have solar energy, and we've worked for about a year trying to identify a partner, a joint venture partner. And I got to be careful about this because we're a public company, and we're
I know, don't mention
finalizing negotiating that. But we have an immersion partner that is a turnkey system, so we can just bring our load in, and we can get into the hosting business. And the hosting arrangement And the catalyst we think for great change is we can lock in a hosting arrangement. And there's such massive need right now for capacity. And we can do this in months, 60 days, 45 to 60 days. And we have a lineup of customers in the 30, tens of megawatts size that are willing to do a deal for a hosting fee and giving us the overclocking. So for us, it becomes a revenue stream that allows us
to make that difference.
Yeah. And then we still have exposure, not as much, right? We don't get the 100%, but the overclocking looks like it can go between 30 to 50%. So we can get that overclocking against Bitcoin. And that to us is our future. We see that as the next, building that now because the capacity will come back. We have customers now, and we can build that portion of our business out, maintaining what we have in New Mexico. And that opens up a new site. And then we can manage the risk of that power. It also, depending on the length and tenure of the hosting contracts, gives us optionality on power on the road if we want to get back into self-mining, if we can pick up some of these ASICs for pennies on the dollar as these things flow out, we can get into that business as well.
Yeah.
So we've been thinking about this for a year, Ilan, and we've been quietly executing on that. And we're in a great position to, I think in the next 30, 45 days, we'll have our first installations. And so
amazing.
Super excited.
So it's exciting times right now for you.
Well, for us, amongst all that noise, that's our green bloom, if you will.
Yeah.
Because it leverages our skill set. We've built an amazing software stack that we can do this hosting for other people, and we can give them access. Because when you're hosting other people, they want to know the machine's running.
Oh, of course.
The software. We've got our CTO is phenomenal. He's just a buttoned down, forward-looking, customer-oriented guy. So, I don't have to worry about that problem. And our software stack allows us to do some of those things, including the measurement of temperatures, all the things that you want to know about your miners, and the ability to reboot so we can automate some of the tasks that need to happen. And it also leverages our connection to the industry and also the demand right now for capacity. So we can kind of fit a bunch of things that are happening in the industry, and also leveraging our skill set to execute.
Excellent. No, it sounds like it's just really exciting right now to be part of Luxxfolio. A lot of things happening behind the scenes, things to come out, and you're positioned well to do it. So that's fantastic news. I know we spoke a little bit about the volatility in the market right now. I know we talked a little bit about Voyager and Coinbase and all these other issues that are coming up. But because of that, and the world events, obviously, of what's happening, everything hedges on BTC and the stocks in general. But so your thoughts, I know, are, this volatility will probably continue the 3, 4, 5 months down the road. But what are your thoughts right now, like currently, with the volatility that's happening right now? Obviously it's unprecedented. You haven't seen this before. We've seen, crypto winters, we've seen this and that, but literally trillions of dollars have been wiped out in the last year out of BTC. I'm not concerned. I'm here for the long game, as Bigg is as well, and as I'm sure you guys are as well. But how does the volatility affect you guys, and what happens to Luxxfolio?
Man, there's a million things in there, right? Because this is what we think about. I think first, you think about that $1 trillion, some of it, like Luna was the beginning of that.
What a disaster.
And just, I remember that week, and again, it was like visceral, like, why does this have to happen? And then you knew that was going to lead to a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
There's always a catalyst that leads to this, going back to the M story that I talked about, and the unraveling of the mortgage loans, and greed and avarice is what is happening at Voyager. Why are they lending money to 3A? Because 3A can only make money. So you're giving your responsibility, your fiduciary responsibility, to someone else to execute.
Right.
So that contagion kind of, as it washes out, the volatility for us is just about Bitcoin price and making sure we understand where that goes. And I wrote down a quote, and I'm just going to read it so I get it right, because this question makes me just think. There's a guy named Paul Krugman, and he was a New York Times journalist from the 90s, and he had a quote that I've been seeing coming out a little bit more. And he goes, the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. 10 years from now, the phrase information economy will sound silly. And that was 1997.
Yeah.
Where I'm looking at all of this, and this is the zoom out that I talk about, is the adoption rate of new technology is unknown. So if that's the unknown factor, and you go from 0 to 100 million people in a decade on the internet,
yeah,
Bitcoin is going on a faster growth curve than that. But if you have the S curve, it's at the bottom of the S curve. So you have to look at any technology you can't be zooming in, we have to zoom out. And so we have to look at this as Bigg is on a 5-year, 7-year cycle. And if these are early days, what are we doing to survive those early days and then thrive when things come up? And that S curve adoption, people are even challenging that, right? That's the existential stuff I talk about. Are we on the growth curve? Is this the right crypto that we've chosen of Bitcoin? And then all the other inputs and managing to that volatility. This is a time to be calm and just seek opportunity and just keep your head down, keep your nose out of other people's business, and keep building a good, sustainable business. And then we'll look for the beginning rate cuts and the inflation and all that other noise that will just calm everyone down. Because I think we're also, part of the problem has been that $2.5 trillion of excess money given to the public.
Yeah, that's where they put it. They put it right into stocks and investments, and guess who's knocking on the door to come collect now with rising interest rates and everything? It's the bank. They're never, the way I look at it is banks like insurance, they're quick to take your money, but they're not very quick to give it back. So that's just.
And so what I love about that even amongst all that, the network's still going. Like it's been able to purge trillions of dollars, and even the recent Luna debacle, and that the pressure of all those coins,
Celsius,
Ball, Voyager, it just keeps on coming. Miners, we're having to sell some of our coins now to make sure that.
Oh yeah, so that was one of the questions actually I wanted to lead into, and probably this was my last question before, if it's okay with you. We've already been going an hour. If I can take another 10 minutes of your time.
I didn't think we'd kill an hour or so.
Oh, come on. We got that bond now, so we can talk for hours. Our Discord channel is just going crazy with questions. And I wanted to ask you 2 or 3 of them because they're very good questions. They're not any questions that are asking for any information or anything like that. It's just more of the workings of the industry, if that's okay. But one of my last question that I personally had for you was, with the market the way it is, what is Luxxfolio strategy? Is it the HODL strategy, to get through it? Am I selling some BTC to be able to fund? What's the run rate with that? Because, investing into Luxxfolio, I think the most important things people want to know is, other than, you're a crypto miner and what kind of set of, partnerships you have, is what's going on financially there? Is there runway? Can you survive a crypto winter or a crypto summer or whatever they want to label this now?
Alan, that's the exact question the board is asking as well.
Yeah.
And we have everything we're working on right now is to make sure our decision-making matrix, which ultimately ends up in our economic model, can support $18,000 to $20,000 Bitcoin for 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And I don't want to look out further than that, because it gets ugly. We have leverage. We have bought machines from NYDIG. And so we're doing a couple of things. We sold some Bitcoin to delever. So that's absolutely the best thing we can do, is let's delever some of those things.
Yeah.
We're accelerating our immersion hosting because that reduces some of our exposure to a flat price. And so those are the 2 primary things we're doing. And in terms of the investment from Bigg, so happy to have Mark and Bigg behind us. And the timing of that could have been better in terms of just making sure we have some reserve. If you look at sustainability 1 year, 2 years out, we need Bitcoin price to go up. Every miner needs Bitcoin price to go up. If it dips below $10,000, you're just learning that much, the balance sheet. So let me pull back from that, because Bitcoin miners, public Bitcoin miners, and even private one, we have risk on and we have risk off. We hold Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin goes up or goes down, pardon me, we get hurt harder. And the reason you want to own a miner is because we should accelerate past Bitcoin versus just buying Bitcoin directly. So when we have it on our balance sheet and it goes down, our asset value goes down and we're earning less. But when it goes up, we get the cash flow benefit as a public company.
Right.
And you can bank. It's great cash flow when price goes up. Mm-hmm. So any Bitcoin handle 25,000, 30,000, 40,000, it's incredible how quickly that transforms us.
Yeah.
And that's the efficiency of the market right now is, okay, we can live with 20. I don't want to, it's no fun.
No.
But even a dip up, if you run as a lean, efficient operation, you'll be fine. And then
a lot of running businesses is just timing, as you mentioned before, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can continue, for me, myself, at least for my businesses, I felt like if they could survive 3 years, I'm kind of in the clear. You know what I mean? And if I'm reinvesting into the business for the first 3 years, if I'm just letting it run under the radar, if it survives that 3 years, somehow it always ends up all right. You know what I mean? And I feel for crypto, especially with the volatility, I feel like it's just going to jump much faster than obviously the 3 years. I could see the 6 to 8 month mark as well. Like you said, if you can survive 5-6 months, the way crypto
zoom out. That's why my thesis right now is zoom out and
yes. Okay, perfect. So if I may I ask you just a couple questions? And if it's a question you don't want to answer, say next. We'll move on to the next one. Obviously, these were not pre-vetted or anything, so I would expect that from you if it was an issue. Okay. So don't feel inclined to not be able to do that.
Thank you.
Is the waiver.
I don't want to answer it. Next one.
Yeah, next question. Okay. Okay, Zango, thanks for jumped in. Okay, so what is the historic relationship you had with Bigg? Did they just approach you? Did you know them from before? And what are the key synergies that both of you, like key synergies and goals between the companies in the space?
Sorry, the beginning of that.
So did you have a historic relationship prior with Bigg?
Right.
And the second question is, what are the key synergies between the companies?
Yeah. So in terms of certainly knew of Netcoins, and one of the things we did as a miner was try to understand the exchanges and who and what they are. So we had some relationship with some of the exchanges because we always thought that was a natural combination. Perhaps if you go back to the consolidation and the M&A, miners provide coins, exchanges need access to coins to settle trades. And that might even be more true now in terms of, the historic money coming off the exchange, the coins coming off the exchange. So just Mark's or Bigg's philosophy of digital assets and where it fits, we just really thought that if getting to know someone like that, it made sense. Ultimately, they have a big balance sheet. If we needed capital, it would be a good fit. So, I had met Mark for lunch as we were trying to develop this relationship. And one of the things he shared at lunch was he's a mountain biker in the North Shore in Vancouver, which is some of the most treacherous hill up and down and drop offs. And it just, in my head and back of my head, I said, if he can do that, he's probably built to build a digital asset with all the peaks and valleys we go.
Oh, yeah.
So there was nothing specific about it other than initial networking and understanding. And just, again, we talk about how much you want to share in this market. And they just brought a different lens than our lens of mining.
Yeah. Okay. And then Filecoin value. Let me see here. Does that ring a bell? Plans about Filecoin value?
Yeah, Filecoin is one of our modest kind of diversification efforts. And Filecoin is decentralized storage, and there's some tokenomics around it. And it's an early promise of a decentralized storage. And by decentralized storage in Filecoin, it's a bunch of nodes and the sharing and storing of other people's storage. And the way it works right now, it's very early days, so it's more glacial. Again, leaning on my storage experience from 30 years ago, nothing much has changed in terms of the principles. So this is our response to the Amazons and Googles that are charging X amount for this glacial storage. And we saw this as a natural fit because it's where the industry is going to go, Web 3.0 and other groups that want to build out decentralized storage solutions. You need a decentralized storage product. So a company called Protocol Labs, 2017, 2018, kind of with a real who's who, raised a couple $100 million to build the technical protocol. We're just trying to participate in that. It feels like are interested in this. It feels like Bitcoin in 2012. It's early days. There's something there, and we're trying to see if it's a natural extension, a leverage of our skills, much like immersion. It's taken a back channel to what we're doing with immersion because we don't want to do too much. We've been working on that one for 6-7 months. We have a very good understanding. Much like Bitcoin, we've chosen to be part of the ecosystem. We're embedded with the who's who of that, and we participate in their conferences. And for now, it's still learning and trying to understand, is this a worthwhile venture in terms of what we're doing?
Amazing. Honestly, Ken, I got to thank you so much for joining us. I know you're busy trying to build out this super duper company that we've heard so much. I'll leave you with this one last thing, which I feel like I say to everybody, but I think it's mostly a trait of Mark. He finds good people. I think that's the one of the most important things for me. What helps me sleep at night. I'm very comfortable with the fact that, other than me being, gracious for the opportunity to speak to people such as yourself and Sean and Terra Zero and Lance, the founder and president of Bigg. The one thing I've learned is that it's just good people, hardworking people who don't feel like they're on a pedestal. They are welcome to working together. People who just want to all succeed, good people. So I want to thank you for obviously giving us the time to get to know Luxxfolio, get to know Ken, and see what it's all about. See who the man is behind the mirror. And we wish you obviously, for obvious reasons, all the best. And just continued growth. And at the same time, I feel like you said, zoom out, relax. We need to remember that BTC is very volatile. We need to remember that, this time tomorrow we could be up 30%, and the whole world is happy again. And we need to remember that this is investing, and we need to remember that this is tech in very early stages. You know what I mean? Like usually tech startups, you look at them after 7+ years and you're like, okay, and add new tech to a new industry. I think people need to just relax and see what Bigg is building out, see what Luxxfolio is building out, see what Terra Zero is building out, see what Liquid is building out, all these strategic investments that are under Bigg's umbrella, because I think not eventually, they all will come together. You know what I mean? And I see more strategic partnerships in the future between everybody. You know what I mean? So once again, thank you very much for your time. I apologize we took a little too much of your time.
No, not at all. I greatly, part of the goalie union, man. I greatly
absolutely. So thank you so much for your time. And we hope to see you again in 6-8 months, a year, and laugh back at this conversation of all the fear and FUD going around and look to better days.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.